Fam, what's good? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. I have some breaking news tonight on Sunday, February 5th. Definitely hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. Kevin Steele hired as the defensive coordinator at the University of Alabama. This coming in from Chris Lowe. Chris Lowe, of course, all over it. Just a couple days ago, Alabama hired their offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees. And then tonight on Sunday, you have Kevin Steele. We're going to have some analysts join us tonight. We'll have Jimmy Stein of BamaInsider.com. We'll have Clint Lamb. I want to get your initial take inside the comment box. So let me know what you think about the hire. Kevin Steele coming over to the University of Alabama. Look, in my opinion, when the news was leaked yesterday, I was excited, to be honest. I think you kind of look to the history of Kevin Steele, what he's been able to do. And I think he's a very good defensive coach. And I think he's kind of that old school mentality that Alabama fans want to see, right? That's kind of what they wanted from that Jeremy Pruitt. And I think you're going to get some very aggressive defenses coming from Alabama right away. So, again, this is just in. Again, Alabama has hired Kevin Steele. This coming in from Chris Lowe. And we'll take your calls in just a few minutes. We're going to have Jimmy Stein join us in just a few minutes of BamaInsider.com. Post your initial take inside the comment box. What do you think? What do you think about the hire? Do you like it? Do you like the offensive coordinator? And now do you like the defensive coordinator? So Alabama making moves as we knew they would. Roll Tide to you guys from where you guys are coming from. Let me know inside the comment box. I was speeding through Tuscaloosa because I was actually bowling tonight, and then I got the text message that Kevin Steele has hired as a coach, so as the DC. So I'm like raced over here, threw the backwards hat on, and away we go. I have Trey Annity producing the show in the background. And I did send the invite to Jimmy Stein. Can we check on that again, please, Trey? Look, I think when you look to what Kevin Steele has done, he was at Miami most recently. Before that, he was at Tennessee for a brief stint. But where I really want you to think about this, and I agree, Ballard Sports, I think this is an A+ hire. Where I really want you to look at Kevin Steele is from 2016 to 2020 at Auburn. I'll tell you a quick story. I disagree, Quentin Young. I don't think he sucks, honestly, because when you look to what's up, Jimmy? Welcome. You just jumped right in. When you look to that Auburn defense from 2016, 2020, Jimmy, I'm talking about Kevin Steele, obviously. Welcome to the show. The Auburn defenses during that tenure, 2016 to 2020, were ferocious. They were very difficult defenses. And I still think that Auburn's defense, the way that they're even playing to this day, is still kind of a spillover from that mentality that Steele had at Auburn. Jimmy, your initial take on Kevin Steele being hired as a DC at Alabama?
No, I'm glad you brought up his time at Auburn. As far as Alabama fans, I think in terms of if you're looking for positivity, if you're looking for hope, if you're looking for why is this a good hire, look at his time at Auburn, which was very recent. And I went back and when it became apparent, we sort of knew this was coming. When it became apparent to me that this was going to happen or very likely to happen, I went back and looked. And really what impressed me, Kyle, about his time at Auburn was they were good on defense in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. They were good every year he was there on defense. Sort of fell apart in 2020, but that's, of course, when they made the change, moved away from Gus Malzahn, and Kevin Steele even became their interim head coach. That was when it sort of fell apart. But up to that point, he had been very good, very consistent. And beyond that, Kyle, let's be honest, Alabama was beating Auburn for players then. Auburn just wasn't as talented as Alabama is year to year, frankly. So Kevin Steele's going to have better players at Alabama this upcoming season than he had at Auburn during those years. He was very good year after year after year. To say nothing of his experience with Nick Saban in this defense. He's run it before. He ran it at Auburn. He ran it at LSU the year he was there. He ran it at Tennessee and was running it at Miami. Now, of course, he inherited a tough situation down there. I wouldn't dive too deep into what happened at Miami this past season. It's a first year transition,
sure.
Big time roster turnover that they had. But overall, I'm pretty excited about this. And it's kind of Nick Saban getting the band back together. You know what I mean? I mean, Kevin Steele was hired when Nick first got here. I mean,
Mhm.
this is him getting his people back, and I think that's big too.
Here with Jimmy Stein, a Bama insider, and Jimmy bring up a great point. In 2007, Kevin Steele was the DC at Alabama, and then he was the inside linebackers coach as well during 2008 before he left to Clemson in 2009 to 2011. He was back at Alabama as the director of player personnel in 2013, and again coached the linebackers in 2014 before headed out to LSU. And then we saw Auburn's defense kind of turn into what Auburn's defense was during those 4 seasons. And I'll tell you what, the first time that I went to the Iron Bowl was in 2017. So I drive over there, stopped at Jay Tate's house in Montgomery, made me an old fashioned, and then we went down to the Iron Bowl. Right, so I'm there. I'm kind of like trying to figure out like bearings, like what's going to happen here. See the War Eagle fly and all this stuff. And I'll tell you what, this was the first. And Alabama had been so dominant that year, and I will tell you that defense pushed Alabama's offensive offensive line around like I have never seen before. And we saw that again. We've seen that just from Auburn's defense. So that's why I'm kind of excited about that. But I think you bring up a great point in the fact that it's kind of getting the band back together. Jimmy, your take on Coach Saban's direction on hiring Tommy Rees, 30 years old. And then you go to Kevin Steele, who has, so much knowledge. I mean, he's 64 years old. So, Saban 70, 71, now your DC is 64. Do you think kind of that old school mentality on the defensive front is coming in, and then you had to have like a new age philosophy or a younger guy on the offensive side? I mean, is there any correlation there?
I don't think so. I really don't. As a matter of fact, the way I look at it is Nick Saban told us back in November on his coach's show
Mhm.
what he was looking for post Bryce. Once Bryce Young moved on, and he didn't say it, but what he meant was Bill O'Brien moving on too. I think at the time Nick Saban knew that Bill O'Brien was highly likely to accept an NFL job when the college season was over. And he told us on his coach's show, I want to be more RPO based. I want to run the football.
Mhm.
I want to be more physical on offense, get back to a little bit of that. And exactly what Nick Saban said on his coach's show that night in November, that's what you got in Tommy Rees, regardless of Tommy's age. I think is irrelevant to that. I think Nick Saban wanted to find an offense coordinator that was new age, that understood new offense, but at the same time was committed to being physical on offense. And with Kevin Steele, look, every one of Saban's hires at defensive coordinator when he's been at Alabama has been guys that have worked with him in the past, guys that have worked in his defense in the past, guys that know his scheme. He's never hired outside the scheme. The closest thing he came to that was hiring Pete Golding, who had been working in the defense for a year before he was promoted to defensive coordinator. But Kirby Smart, Jeremy Pruitt, now Kevin Steele for a second time. These are guys that have worked with Nick Saban, with Nick Saban's defense, which remains the same. Even at the Miami Dolphins, the Cleveland Browns, Michigan State, LSU, it's always been the Saban defense. Still the same defense today. He's going to go and hire one of those guys. I think in terms of who was hireable and who was available, Kevin Steele was probably about the best you could do.
Here with Jimmy Stein of Bama Insider. As on Sunday, February 5th, Alabama has hired Kevin Steele as the defensive coordinator per Chris Lowe, who's of course been all over it. And then on Friday, you had Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, coming to Alabama. So now Alabama has their OC in their DC. I believe they still have one position to fill, and that's going to be their safety spot. So is it obvious that Kevin Steele takes over the defense and also the inside linebackers, right? I mean, that's perfect sense, right?
I think so. I mean, that's what I think is going to happen. I would just say this. It's not inside scoop. It's not, hey, watch, this is coming. But let's look at, the safety spot is vacant, but now you're at 10 coaches. They do have 10 coaches, which is all you can have. But no one is clearly there to coach the safeties. You got Coleman Hutzler, the returning outside linebacker coach. You've hired Austin Armstrong. He's been a linebacker coach his entire career. He's never coached any other position but him, but there. And Kevin Steele, who has spent most of his career coaching linebackers. Now, here's what I'd say. One possibility is Kevin Steele coaching the safeties. He has coached that position before, but it was brief. It's not his expertise. It's not, hey, this is my strength, but he can do it. and that spot is open. Other than that, it would take additional staff movement, I believe, for Kevin Steele to coach inside linebacker. So that's something to watch. Is there going to be additional staff movement for Alabama on the defensive side of the ball? If not, then Kevin Steele's going to coach the safeties.
Here with Jimmy Stein of BamaInsider.com. Definitely the thumbs up, like, subscribe. Jimmy, when we look to the salary, I mean, Kevin Steele is a guy who gets paid. In 2018, he was right at $2 million at Auburn. Same thing in 2019. In 2020, Kevin Steele was making 2.5. I believe he was the highest paid coordinator, along with Steve Sarkisian, who was then at Alabama during that tenure. We don't have a reference point at Miami what he was making, but it's you're not going to leave for less amount, right? So it's probably around that figure. I mean, you're looking at probably the highest paid defensive coordinator in all of college football tonight.
Well, he has experience to back it up. He's got a resume to back it up. And here's an interesting thing, Kyle. How about this exclusively to Bama Insider? I wish I could give credit to the guy who told me to look at this, but I'm not, because it was a private conversation. But he sometimes listens to the show. So shout out to you, the person listening that told me to look at this, because it's not private information. It's easy to look up. How about this? You need 10 years in the Alabama retirement system to vest and get full retirement. As we know, Kevin Steele is 64 years old. I went back and counted up today at my buddy, one of my inside sources said, hey, why don't you go look at this? And I did. And ends up between his years at Alabama and Auburn, Kevin Steele's at 9 years. So he needs one more year to fully vest to get a lifetime pension. And it would be a significant dollar figure because it's based on what your salary is while you're in the system. So Kevin Steele making a significant amount of money in Alabama this year is going to produce for him a retirement pension check from the state of Alabama just for coaching one or even 2 seasons at Alabama. So I'm not saying that's why he took the job, but it is a factor, of course. I mean, you know, when you get older and he's not going to be coaching forever, and he was coaching at Miami, which is a private school, you know, so they're not going to have the kind of retirement system that the public schools in the state of Alabama has. So you got to figure that's a factor as well in terms of why leave Miami, why leave Mario Cristobal. They're obviously building a good program there with the recruiting and the NIL stuff they got going on there. But I do think money is a factor, but it might be just as much factor about him being in the vesting in the retirement system than his actual paycheck he's going to get from Alabama, which is going to be, of course, sizable.
When we look to some of the comments here, and of course, all the comments are mixed. You know, some people like it, some people don't. Of course, that's just kind of the nature of new things, right? Most people don't like new things. Jimmy, why might people be a little bit, you know, let's play devil's advocate here. And when we're kind of looking at all angles of Kevin Steele, you know, what are people maybe like nervous about or weary about with this hire? Because there's clearly negative feedback. Just same thing with Tommy Rees. And truth of the matter is, Saban, when has Saban kind of led you wrong in a sense? So it's like hard to criticize his hires. But when you kind of look on the outside, what are people maybe thinking about maybe the way his schematics are from the defensive side?
Yeah, I think the negatives are people that aren't positive. They're looking at a couple things. Number one is age. He is 64 years old. Number two, it hasn't always been great. You know, he left Alabama twice. You know, it hasn't always been great. He went to Clemson when he left Alabama initially, and he left Clemson after giving up 70 in a game. 70. That did happen. At LSU in 2015, it wasn't great. At Miami this past season, it wasn't great. He was a head coach at Baylor once. It was bad. It didn't go well at all. It hasn't always gone great year to year in the Kevin Steele resume. It hasn't. But what I find, positive, again, Kyle, is late in his career, went really well at Auburn in a very similar situation he's going to have at Alabama. And at Alabama, he works for Nick Saban, the best there's ever been. He's also going to have great players. He'll have better players at Alabama than he had in his 5 seasons at Auburn that all went well. So there's no reason to dwell on the negative, but it is out there. It hasn't always been great, and I'm sure that's why there is some level of backlash.
do you think there's also going to be some negative recruiting in essence, just as you said, kind of, people point to the age, and I mean, with age comes wisdom and experience, right? If you ever make mistakes, go ask if somebody's already telling you what to do who's older than you, chances are listen to them, right? Because they've gone through that same thing. I mean, you learn that as you grow. But I mean, is there going to be some negative recruiting in the sense he's 64 years old? He doesn't understand kind of the defense of today.
I'm sure that will be, but at the same token, you could say, well, look, they hired the young guy in Tommy Reese. He's too young. I mean, so you can always argue. I mean, so everybody that's hired has to be what, 45? You're not too young. You're not too old. That's not really logical. I think what Alabama needs to be fired up about is having a mix. You got Tommy Reese, you got the 30-year-old, you got the young guy that communicate. And then on the defensive side, you've got some wisdom and experience, and the staff is now a mix of those things, which is fantastic. But make no mistake, folks, it's Kevin Steele and it's Tommy Reese, but this is Nick Saban's offense and defense. They're not coming here to do what they want. They're not coming. Nick Saban is hands-on with everything. I think he shows the people that work in the building how to hang the pictures in the hallways. Well, he's extremely hands-on.
You brought up this on Friday and it stuck with me. And I think people need to understand this because you're absolutely right. Coach Saban has made it clear that it's the Alabama offense, it's the Alabama defense. But you said it's not like Tommy Reese is bringing the playbook over and implementing that for Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe. No. Tommy is going to have to get acclimated to the Alabama playbook. And the same thing with Kevin Steele. He's going to come over and have to grasp the concepts that Nick Saban wants him to understand going forward. And then you pair that with the personnel and you pair that with the, years and years of experience. And when you add up kind of his resume and then you add up what Nick Saban wants you to do, and then you add up the player personnel, you probably feel better if you're an Alabama fan.
That's right. It's Nick Saban's playbook and it's Nick's terminology. So Nick, because he's always the smartest guy in the room. What Nick Saban always says is, hey, I'm not going to teach 125 guys in the room Kevin Steele's terminology. I'm going to teach one person, Kevin Steele, the terminology that 125 of us use, and so it's the Alabama playbook. He's worked with it before. And with his years of experience and his time at Auburn, Kyle, his time at Miami, he can say, hey, we're going to run the Saban defense, but look at these couple of things that I learned at Auburn, at Miami, that can improve what we're doing here. So his new ideas, his improvements, they will be happily accepted or like, hey, let's try this. The new ideas are great, but at its core, at its most basics, this is Nick Saban's defense. And Kevin Steele has as much experience with it and running it as anybody in the business.
Hey, Jimmy, we appreciate it. Of course, if you want to catch up more with Jimmy, you can go to Bama Insider. Does a fantastic job facilitating the message board. Jimmy, thank you for joining us tonight regarding Kevin Steele to Alabama.
Thanks so much, Kyle.
I appreciate it. All right, Clint, what's up, man? Happy Sunday. Kevin Steele hired as a DC at Bama. Your initial take?
I like it. I know there are probably going to be a lot of fans out there who don't like it. I understand where you're coming from, especially when you saw the reaction that you did to Tommy Reese. Like, if you're going to go look at the statistics, and that's really the only thing you're going to go off of, then this is not a sexy hire. This is not this isn't Glenn Schumann. This isn't Jeremy Pruitt, who pretty much had a number 1 or number 2 ranked defense the entire time he was in Tuscaloosa. It's a guy who is familiar with Nick Saban. I think that was very important in this whole process. If you don't go get Jeremy Pruitt, Kevin Steele, I mean, he's familiar with Nick Saban. He knows what to expect going in. And I think he's a good defensive-minded guy. Statistically speaking, has he been perfect everywhere he's been? No. But I think there are elements to what he's been able to do at various places that could really benefit Alabama. And I think with where Nick Saban is at right now, and we don't know, is Kevin Steele going to be the defensive coordinator in 2, 3, 4 years? It's possible, but it's also possible that a Jeremy Pruitt at that point, or somebody else that could emerge, by that point could end up being a guy later on. But I think for right now, with what Nick Saban was looking for, I think it was a pretty good hire.
Here with Clint Lamb, a Bama Insider, does a fantastic job. Make sure to follow Clint Lamb on social media. Here talking about Kevin Steele being hired as Alabama's defensive coordinator, per report by Chris Lowe, who's been all over it. So Chris Lowe, I don't know if you've been watching our YouTube channel, but man, you've been doing a fantastic job and was all over the news on Friday as Tommy Rees coming to Alabama as the OC. Clint, when we look to Kevin Steele, and we kind of, what I was talking about with Jimmy, I don't know if you caught the beginning of the show, if you were getting prepared for this one, from 2016 to 2020, he was at Auburn. And that's kind of how I look to the Kevin Steele that I am excited about, because honestly, those defenses at Auburn were very difficult to run the football against. They were very physical in the secondary. You look at the personnel that Alabama has going into this season, and I think he has clearly a lot to work with. And if you bring that kind of old school mentality, the hard hitting, I mean, Auburn was very, very physical during those years. And watching those games in the Iron Bowl, I mean, you feared Auburn's defense because they were always going to bring it. Is that kind of how you look to Kevin Steele, or do you kind of look at the length of his career, being that he is 64? He's been a head coach. He's been at Bama several times, was recently at Miami. Like, how do you see Kevin Steele when you look to this hire?
For me, I like what you bring up. I think you bring up an excellent point. I mean, the defensive fronts that they had in Auburn, they played with a chip on their shoulder. They were very effective. Were they the best, pass rushers? Not always. They had some good pass rushers, don't get me wrong, but Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown, he was a good interior pass rusher, but their edge guys left a little bit something to be desired. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, Holland was fantastic, and they've had some other players as well. But with him, it's like I said, to me, I keep coming back to he's familiar with Nick Saban. He's familiar with the program. He's familiar with the SEC. He understands how to recruit it. And so this isn't just Kevin Steele. Like, people's got to understand, this is going to be Nick Saban and Kevin Steele. And by the way, also Austin Armstrong, who's a very bright young defensive mind. So you kind of got the old school in Kevin Steele, bringing kind of all of his knowledge and stuff, and I think that's going to be very impactful and beneficial for Austin Armstrong. But on the flip side of that, I think the new and the fresh ideas from Armstrong is really going to benefit this defense as well. He's also called a defense before. He's been very effective at what he was able to do at Southern Miss. I thought it was pretty spectacular, considering the talent level that they have and things like that, and just the improvement that the unit showed as a whole. So I think it's more of a collective thing. Let's go ahead and ride this thing out, though. If you're going after Jeremy Pruitt, that didn't work out. You bring back Kevin Steele. Go get Bo Davis. Go get let's get Sal Sinceri back on the field. Let's have some fun with it. Let's go back to 2015, 2016, 2017 Alabama.
Clint, you up to take a couple calls tonight?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man, let's do it. So call line is open, 205-850-1994. Sunday night, we're coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, as Alabama has hired Kevin Steele as a DC. So now you have your DC and your OC taken care of for the 2023 season. Entering the month of February, fourth quarter program already taking place at the University of Alabama. And it's amazing to think that they have, 25, 26 early enrollees. Clint, while we wait for a couple calls to come in, call line is at the bottom of the show. Kind of talk about the personnel and what Kevin Steele is going to be able to work with. And let's kind of start with that defensive line threshold that some guys that are returning that people should be excited about, but most importantly, Kevin Steele, because it's all where it starts, in the trenches.
Yeah, I think that, when you look at the defensive line, we don't know how healthy Justin Nboibi is going to be, but just having his veteran presence potentially being back, I think that would be big. You see Jaheim Otis, that kind of, he's got the run stopping, space eating ability, but also he's got some interior pass rush, a lot more juice than you would expect for a guy his size. You've still got edge rushers with Chris Braswell and with Dallas Turner. You've got young guys coming in, and Keon Keeley and Pierre as well. I mean, you're talking about, just from a youth perspective and a veteran experience perspective, the defensive front is going to be loaded with depth and talent, and really, you're getting that at all three levels. And I think that that's pretty big. The way that they've been able to recruit on that side of the football in this, recruiting class, the 2023 class, I really think that it's a great time to be joining this defense and being able to kind of play around with all the different ways that you're going to be able to attack, opposing offenses. And so, what people's got to understand is Pete Golding, he had access to all this talent the last couple of years. He did what he did with it. Kevin Steele, I don't care where he's been. His first year in Tuscaloosa, obviously the talent level was not there yet. I mean, it was a barely over a 500 football team. At Clemson, obviously some talent, LSU, Miami, Auburn, all those places are great. Don't get me wrong. But we talk about Tommy Rees having access to a lot more talent and things like in depth at his disposal. Kevin Steele, it's the same thing for him defensively. He's never had this anywhere he's been. And so I'll be curious to see what he does with it.
We got a 716 that we're going to take. I believe it's my boy, Jarek. Jarek from Buffalo. What's up, man?
What's up, boys? How y'all doing, man?
Man, it's good to hear from you. I'm sorry about your Buffalo Bills. My Niners are on. We're going to be watching the Super Bowl with you, man. But let's get to it, man. Alabama hires Kevin Steele. Give us your take and post any questions that you have for us.
No, man. I think that I thought this was a decent hire. I think very similar to how I felt about Tommy Rees, how it's just kind of more of a decent hire. Tommy Rees, you got him for his upside. Because he's pretty much had a small sample size, right, for the most part. And I think for the most part, we're going to be running a more of a pro style offense. We're going to be running the football a lot more. We're going to be relying a lot more on our physicality. And I think the most important part, and with Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele now being hired, is that these are guys that specialize in the trenches. I think that Kevin Steele, he's had some really, really good years. Of course, obviously the Clemson stint, what he did at LSU for a little bit, and obviously the most impressive one in my opinion was the Auburn one, what he did in with that 2017 and that 2019 defense. Kevin Steele was able to pretty much, he always had really, really good defensive fronts, and for the most part they were able to develop some really, really good guys up there in the trenches. I do think that this defense could be a little bit different with Kevin Steele. Obviously, what he ran at Auburn compared to now, but I think that this was kind of more of a yin yang type of thing, right? Offensively, you got an upside guy, and now you have kind of already an already established name, not the biggest name. Obviously, Bama fans are going to be disappointed because we couldn't land Jeremy Pruitt. I don't know if he was ever considered an option. But obviously a very, very experienced guy. He knows the SEC from a recruiting standpoint. He knows the area extremely well. He is on the older side about it, so that may be a little concern. But, obviously when you take a look at Alabama stand, besides Kirby Smart and Pete Golden, we haven't really had, coordinators that have lasted here for a long time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But overall wise, I'm feeling pretty decent about the hire.
Clint, give him some feedback, man.
Yeah, I'm right there with him. And really, it's kind of, like I said, I like the fact that they have a young, defensive minded guy who has some experience calling plays, understands looking at the defense as a whole, and Austin Armstrong to kind of complement what Kevin Steele is going to bring from an experience standpoint. And just, he's seen a lot of football over the years at various places. He's got a lot of input, a lot of knowledge. I would actually like to see that on the other side of the ball. I would like for Alabama to get, more of a veteran established presence to kind of help guide, Tommy Rees. I think that would have been very beneficial for him at Notre Dame. Why not at Alabama bring in some kind of analyst or something that maybe has some head coaching experience or has been, an established offensive coordinator? Might not be the guy that you would want calling your offense at this point, but just somebody that can help, kind of blend the two together. Defensively, I feel pretty good about it. And it's like I said, the talent level. I think what Kevin Steele's going to want to bring to Alabama is going to complement what they're trying to do offensively extremely well. Like Kevin Steele understands exactly. He was part of Alabama's brand at a time where their identity was being able to stop the run, being able to play off of that. He didn't have access to all these, exterior pass rush and things like that. But I think that just the two coordinator hires to me makes a lot of sense. And Nick Saban didn't want to spend the entire offseason getting to know two new coordinators and trying to establish or build those relationships. And I think that that's why, Glenn Schumann and Jeremy Pruitt were already two guys who were very high on the list. And for whatever reason, they didn't work out. And we know probably why both of them didn't. Schumann probably wanted to stay with Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt, he's got the stuff going on with the NCAA. So it ended up not working out with those two guys. But I think what Nick Saban, from a bare bones perspective, was looking for in his next defensive coordinator hire, I certainly think he's got that.
All right, Jared, get one more question in, man, before we go to our next caller.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you guys feel about overall quarterback development? You know, Tommy Rees, of course, being a former quarterback in Notre Dame, but how do you feel like he can develop using Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson and some of these other guys that are becoming with their class? Of course, different quarterbacks that, you know, have different skill sets. Obviously, Jalen Milroe looks like he could potentially fit more of a spread system. But how do you feel he and Ty Simpson moving forward can fit what Tommy Rees is going to bring to the table?
Well, I certainly think that there's a lot of I was impressed with what he did at Notre Dame with Ian Book, and I talked about this the other night, and I'll kind of reiterate it a little bit. Just taking a guy who was, you know, a former 3-star player, didn't have a whole lot of arm strength, didn't have a whole lot of size, really built an offense that really fit for him. He utilized his skill set to the best of his ability, which certainly helped him be successful. And then he turned him into an NFL quarterback, not just a guy who was a Mr. Irrelevant, not even a Brock Purdy caliber player who's proved to be a pretty good NFL quarterback, but he was a guy who was drafted in the 4th round. He was obviously very well thought of. And I think that he can have success, you know, developing quarterbacks that fits what Alabama's trying to do. And one thing about it, Georgia's quarterbacks the last couple of years, Stetson Bennett, I guess, is the main one, but also Daniel as well. Both of those guys had everything that you look for as a quarterback to help complement you or put you in a position where you can be successful. They had an offensive coordinator who understood them and built around them in a way that would allow them to be successful. They had a complementary run game with a deep stable of running backs that could take pressure off of them. They had an offensive line that could keep them adequately protected, and they had a complementary defense that was very opportunistic and could, you know, generate turnovers, game-changing turnovers that puts the offense in a position where it can be successful. And it can also, you know, whether it be a pick six or something like that, like the Kentucky game a couple of years ago was the one that comes to mind. A couple of pick sixes, and now Stetson Bennett has a commanding lead. It takes all the pressure off of him. So I think that that's what Alabama wants to do with its quarterbacks is put them in that position where they're surrounded by all those different, you know, elements. And I think it'll make their job a lot easier.
Hey, Jarek, we appreciate you calling in, man. Stay blessed. Please call again next time I have a call-in show.
Man, always, man. Yeah, you boys have a good night, man.
All right, man. Take it easy. That was my good boy, Jarek up in Buffalo. Call line is open 205-850-1994. We got a 256 and a 916 and now a 502 inside the call log. You're on with Kyle Henderson, Clint Lamb coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama on Sunday, February 5th as Alabama has hired Kevin Steele as the defensive coordinator at the University of Alabama. So now you have your OC set and you have your DC set. Kind of post a poll. I wish we could post a poll on here. Who are you most excited for? More excited for Rees and what he's bringing to Alabama, or more excited on the defensive front? We go to our next caller right now here. It's a 256 coming in right now. Thank you. Hey, you're on the line with Kyle Henderson and Clint Lamb. Where are you calling in from, and who are we on the line with?
I'm calling from Tuscaloosa. My name's Daniel, man.
Hey, what's up, Daniel? If you could just speak up just a little bit more, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm traveling to Louisiana.
Okay, man. Be safe on the road. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the hire because, you know, he's going to bring physicality. He's going to bring that toughness back because when Pete was the DC, we wasn't putting pressure on the quarterback. We relied on Will Anderson trying to get the quarterback all the time or the linebacker. Like, we didn't send no safety blitzes, no corner blitzes or nothing. We just sat back in the pocket and getting torched. And it drove me crazy. So with Kevin Steele coming back, he's not going to be afraid to send pressure. And that's what we need. Because, you know, Auburn, he was at Auburn, I mean, like you said, you could barely run on him. You can't really throw on him. But there was always pressuring you with the D-line or sending corner blitzes. And that's what we need back at Alabama because, you know, Pete was just too scared to do anything. He just played to where, like, okay, I'm going to see if you can beat this, and then I'm going to adjust to something else and see if you beat that.
Clint, I mean, when you look to Alabama's defense under Pete Golding, did you feel at times like the brilliant mind of Pete Golding, right? If you've ever heard him speak, I mean, he clearly knows the schematics like nobody knows it, right? I mean, it's really unbelievable to listen to. But do you feel that sometimes, and I'm asking this to Clint, so hang on, caller, just while I ask Clint this, do you feel that sometimes Clint was almost that Pete was almost too complex in his approach with the defense?
Yes, I certainly do. Yeah, and I think that just because there's something about understanding something yourself, but also being able to relay that to others. Like that's where the teaching comes into play. And with Pete Golding, I'm not saying he's not a good teacher. I'm saying that everything that he was asking a lot of these guys to do, he understood. And if he, had the athletic ability and the youth to be able to get out there and do it himself, I think he would be very effective at it. The problem is that just because he has that knowledge and stuff, it doesn't always get relayed, to some of these young players. I mean, I can't even imagine having to learn Alabama's defense in general as an 18 or 19-year-old kid when, before I really dove into football and had years to watch film where I actually was disciplined enough to do it and things like. I feel like I've really grown my football knowledge really in my mid to late 20s is where I really started. At 18 or 19, I mean, it's complicated stuff for anybody. And with Pete, I do think he got a little bit overcomplicated at times. Sometimes it's just letting your athletes be athletes. Like before you saw Alabama defenses, they played with discipline. I think that the reason that they didn't as much this past year, the last couple of years, is because they were thinking too much. They weren't going 100 miles an hour and they were panicking because when you're not confident in what you're doing, if a football's in the air and you're not even confident if you're in the right spot, if you're a defensive back, you're already in kind of the wrong mindset to be able to execute things, effectively. So I think that just making things simpler on the players, allowing them to really use their exceptional talent to kind of take over football games, I think that's going to be very beneficial. But also just bringing that physical style in the standard. That's another thing that Kevin Steele has been a part of at Alabama that he understands is the standard in which Alabama is supposed to look and supposed to play with. And if the guys aren't living up to that standard, I also think he's a guy who's very accountable and he will hold those around him very accountable.
Hey, Daniel, why don't you get another question in for Clint?
Well, actually, I was thinking the reason I think Nick Saban really went out and got some more D linemen recruits because that's another thing was missing. I think he's going back to his old scheme to where more 4-down linemen get after the quarterback, and sometimes let the middle linebackers sit back and cover stuff in the middle, cover the flats with the running back. Because when the old scheme he was doing now, he was just playing like for a 3-3-5, trying to cover the pass too much, but we was getting ate up in the running game also.
And we'll answer on the other line, man. But please call again next time, man. And we appreciate it, man. Be safe on your journey to Louisiana. Go ahead, Clint.
Yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. I do think that Alabama's looking for more complementary interior impactfulness. I guess is the way to put it. And I think they've got some guys who could develop into that. We've talked about Otis. I already think he's becoming that guy. I think James.
I love Jaheim. Oh,
man. I think he's one of the most important players on Alabama's entire roster. Just from what he can do, not only to create issues for the offensive line, but what he can do for keeping the linebackers clean. And we talk about, the physicality of Alabama's linebackers in the past. And sure, Rolando McClain was super physical, Dante Hightower, Rashaan Evans, Reuben Foster. But at the same time, those guys also had dominant defensive linemen in front of them that made their job a whole lot easier. Rolando was kind of coming through. They were still trying to establish some of that. So he had to do a lot of the grunt work. But when you're 6'4", 255 as an off-ball linebacker, I mean, you can handle it. But Reuben Foster, man, I mean, he got to be the heat-seeking missile a lot of the time because there was defensive line. I mean, Dalvin Tomlinson to me is one of the most underrated players during the Nick Saban era. Up front, you had Deron Payne, you had Ashawn Robinson. There are just so many different defensive linemen who made an impact. Jerron Reed was another one who I think Alabama needs to get back more to guys who are not only create for themselves but also have the ability to create for others and allow the linebackers to go and make plays. And I don't think we've seen that quite as much. In fact, I would say that that's been the biggest drop off from the defensive line. I think they're making roughly about the same amount of plays that they made before. You don't have a Jonathan Allen interior defensive lineman necessarily or a Quentin Williams, but you have guys who are capable of making plays on their own. I don't see as much creating for the second level as we've seen in the past. And I would like to see that a little bit more. And that's where a guy like Jaheim Otis and James Smith and some of those guys can come into play.
We got a 916. We're going to take it right now. Hey, good evening. You're on the line with Kyle Henderson and Clint Lamb coming to you from Tuscaloosa. Where are you coming from and who are we on the line with?
Oh, Kyle, don't act like you don't know who this is. It's your boy Mike from Cali, man.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? You know, I wish I had everybody's phone number saved. That would be that would make it a little bit of an easier introduction, man. Yeah, but go ahead, man. Give us your take on Kevin Steele being hired at Bama. Go ahead, man.
All right, I'm gonna try to dumb you down with my response and my take on this one because you know I can go in.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you a question because to my knowledge, I believe Alabama we lost 2 games last season by combined 4 points or something like that, if I can remember correctly.
That's right.
The last season, our last couple of non-championship seasons have all been broken down to either the defensive coordinators and not having our defense set and prepared to deal with all of these random offenses and these no-huddle offenses, and or we've discussed our offensive inability to be creative. And yet we are still a top-tier team in the toughest conference in the football. And I believe we just solved probably a great big deal of our problems that we've been dealing with for the last couple of years. Pete Golding is a great guy. I've listened to him talk, just like you say. Mm-hmm. He can be mesmerizing with his knowledge.
Yeah.
But, you know, confidence in having the ability to inspire others to follow not just an understanding, but an actual direction. You never felt that off of him. And it's the same thing with Bill O'Brien. With this offensive coordinator we just got and the defensive coordinator we got, a perfect blend of maturity, like you guys were just speaking about, knowledge, youth, energy. You have coaches that recruits can look at with all of that knowledge and into the future with them being there with that whole little mix. And behind all that, you have the great University of Alabama and this guy down there in Tuscaloosa, what's the name?
You get Saban?
Nick Saban?
Yeah.
You know, so if I'm an Alabama fan like I am, I'm elated. We got rid of all the baggage that wasted Bryce last season here, Will Anderson's last season here, all these great linebackers that we had that didn't get enough play and rep because our defense wasn't established. Now we got rid of all that and we started right back anew. And by this time next year, we didn't have one championship. I'm almost guaranteeing we're going to be back in the national championship.
All right, we're gonna. Mike,
Cal, man, y'all know how I do.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. We're gonna answer on the other line, man. Thanks for calling in again, Mike. That's Mike from Cali. Clint, Mike had a lot of different points, but he was kind of talking about, unloading the baggage. Do you feel that, when people saw the release of Pete Golding, they were elated, right? And then you're like, okay. They were almost certain it was going to be Jeremy Pruitt, and then it was going to be Schumann. It was like kind of all over the place, and then you get the actual news that's going to be Steele. I mean, do you feel that? Let me ask you this, and you don't, Clint. You don't have to answer me, okay? Because this is a straight up question. Is this an upgrade from Pete Golding? Want to phone a friend?
You know what? I think in some ways it is. Because
it's like, is it an upgrade?
Yeah, I would probably say that it is, and I like Pete a lot, and I think he's going to do good things at Ole Miss. I think there's a lot that he got blamed for that he shouldn't have been blamed for, and I think that now, I mean, he's either going to sink or swim. He's kind of on his own. Whatever he does, he does. But I think he's going to do some pretty good things. I think he's got some talent deficiencies, and we keep talking about these other guys that are going to be coming in who are getting talent that they've never had before to work with. Pete Golding's kind of the opposite. He's had that at his disposal the last few years, and now he's got to go, still to an SEC program, but one that didn't have nearly the amount of talent and he's going to have to overcome the fact that Lane Kiffin likes to score a lot of points, likes to run tempo, and put strain, on his defense. But with Kevin Steele, and I don't know this to be fact with Pete Golding, this is purely speculation, and it's mostly due to age. And I can fully acknowledge that could be playing into my perception here. But it could be very possible that Kevin Steele is not going to be everybody's best friend, right? I mean, when you're a young coach who's kind of, likes to be, young and popular and stuff like that. I'm not saying that Pete Golding didn't get on to people, but it's kind of more of like, a friend that's getting on to you rather than like a father figure, if that kind of makes sense. And, the offense is going to be dealing with the exact opposite problem. You've gotten a lot younger. I mean, this guy's 30 years old. He's not that much older than some of these players. I mean, I think he's only probably the same age as Stetson Bennett at this point. But
you bring up a great point, and we have a 502 in the call queue. Just hang on. I know you've been patient. We're going to get to it in just a second. You bring up a great point, though, Clint. Like, in my opinion, the DC has to be an a-hole, right? Like, nobody likes him. Like, nobody can like this guy. And you need people like that in your organization that nobody likes. And if they're good at their job, who cares? Okay, we're all going to get caught up on like how to treat people, but this is football, right? Like, there has to be an alpha mentality. You have to fear your elders. You have to fear the defensive coordinator, period. Like, if people aren't going to go into the room, if you're 18 and 20, 21 years old, they're going to fear Steele. Like, and I hope they do. And I hope that mentality comes to Alabama. And I hope that he has that alpha mentality. And that's what Nick Saban likes. You know what? That's why he likes Kool-Aid, because Kool-Aid don't give a F. Really, he doesn't. He likes dogs. Like, he likes guys who are alpha mentality. And you have to bring that if you're on the defensive side of the ball, period. We're going to go to our 502. We'll take it right now. All right, good evening. You're on the line with Kyle Henderson and Clint Lamb. Sorry, I was going off on the defense. I just feel the defense needs that defensive mentality. Where are you calling in from, and who are we on the line with?
How about you, Lucky? It's Mike from Kentucky.
Mike from Kentucky, man. It's been way too long. I'm so glad you're doing okay.
Oh, man, if I was any better, I'd be twins, brother.
All right, man. Take it away. Alabama hires Kevin Steele. Give us your take.
Well, I agree with your analyst. It really, Pete Golden, he had to work with the cards he was dealt. We haven't had a true meat eater on the interior. A great edge rusher has to be complemented with some, two gap rushers up the middle. I mean, that's, I really wasn't that unhappy with him. I saw what was happening to his big edge rusher. He got double teamed all day, and to be honest, I haven't seen a middle linebacker that hit you so hard your kids would be born dizzy since Reuben Foster played. And that's been a minute, man. That's been a minute. Hopefully we can, get that, rectified. I know there's always plenty of talent around. You talk about being a mean hombre of a coach. I mean, a lot of people talk about you can't coach like that anymore, man. This millennial generation is just a different breed of cat, than the Rolando McClains and Reuben Fosters and, the guys of the past. It's kind of a, it's kind of a pretty hard debate. You can win with either side,
Yeah, but Mike, I straight up think the defense needs, like, you got to be hard on defense. Like, you have to have the mentality. And sometimes, like, the lack of tackling, the arm tackling, come on, like, you just said it. I mean, you have to have inside linebackers whose mission is to blow up anything that comes their way, period. Clint, chime in on this.
Yeah, I think that there has been something lacking on the inside, and it's nothing against Henry To'oTo'o. He's a different style of linebacker, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I also think that, he would have looked a lot better had he had, some gap controlling defensive linemen in front of him who could play with a little bit more of just creating more opportunities, for him. And I think in an NIL era where everybody is trying to, make the play themselves, I'm not saying that these players are selfish by any means. I'm not going to go that far, but I think it's a different mentality because I think you are naturally, it's less about the team. It's, am I making my money? Am I getting my deals? Am I doing, the things that I need to be doing? It becomes less about what your locker room's doing and more about what you're doing. And that can kind of translate a little bit to the field, or at least it could. I'm not saying that it does, but in certain instances, a guy might be like, I'm not interested in allowing, Deontay Lawson to get a free run to go make a play. I want to make the play. And from a lack of discipline, that can also play into that a little bit as well. I just think that it is a different world than we were living in, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I think Nick Saban's still trying to figure out how to navigate that properly, because I think he kind of went in the other direction a little bit too far as I'm not saying he was letting players get by with anything and stuff, but you can't approach the players the same way that you did previously. As far as the way that you discipline and things like that. I mean, if he smacked a quarterback on the behind like he did AJ McCarron back in the day, I mean, who knows? I mean, he might get fired for it. I mean, obviously that's extreme and sarcastic, but I mean, you get what I'm trying to say.
I don't think so. You can't do anything.
You do control for everything.
You can't even drink water. Water's bad. Water's bad for you. Everything is too soft. Mike, what else you got for us, man, before we let you go?
Well, with this new offensive coordinator, to me personally, I think Jalen Milrose will be the second coming of Michael Vick in a RPO, style offense, run pass option, and then make their safeties come downhill and then throw it over the top. I think we've got some guys in the receiving room that can get over the top. I can't remember his name. He's wearing Waddle's old number. Help me out.
Isaiah Bond.
Yeah. I think he can get over the top, but I mean, in the right offense, I think Jalen Milrose has got all the tools. I think he's durable. He's got great character. I mean, that's who I'm kind of pulling for, but whoever, starts, but it just depends on what kind of offensive scheme. You got to scheme for your talent on hand, and I think he would be unstoppable in a run pass option offensive scheme. What do you think?
Hey, Mike, we'll answer on the other line, man, but we appreciate you calling. Stay safe, stay blessed, and we appreciate you calling from Kentucky.
I will, man. Have a good night.
All right. That's Mike in Kentucky. Give us a quick hit on Jalen Milroe, Clint. And for everyone out there, I know a lot of people sometimes get it confused, like Milrose. It's a Milroe. Just so you guys know out there, just when you're talking with your friends around the campfire or whatever, is Jalen Milroe. Go ahead, Clint.
Yeah. I really think Ty Simpson is an ideal fit in this offense, but that doesn't mean that Jalen Milroe can't be successful. We've seen growth from quarterbacks before. We've talked about that so many times on this show. Really, the main couple of things that Milroe needs to work on: cut down on the turnovers, which means making better decisions, then turning around and being able to throw with a little bit more accuracy, get your mechanics where they need to be. Trust your footwork, trust yourself, and make the reads that you need to make. Getting through his progressions, being confident enough in what he's being asked to do where he can work through pre-snap, make sure everybody's lined up correctly. I know that's been a little bit of an issue with him as well. He was still a young guy. He was only a second-year quarterback this past year. So it's not like, people see that and they think, okay, this is, he's a finished product. And that's simply not the case.
We got a super chat in. Thanks for 2 more weeks. It said, I tried calling and kept on saying busy. You know how many callers are on right now that are busy? 95 callers are blocked right now because it's busy. But we do have a 205 in the call queue. We'll take a couple more before we say good night tonight. And then we'll be back on Monday. We have Monday Night Quarterback. I might do a morning show. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it sounds like, with the OC and DC hired, I'll probably be back on Monday morning, wrap with you guys. So if you didn't get in tonight, you guys can call tomorrow morning. I'll have my show at 9 a.m. Central Time. Appreciate you guys' support. But yeah, 95 people are also trying to call. We appreciate the super chat. I tried to keep calling. Just want to say, I feel like we're getting back to the physicality on defense, the old Bama in the inside linebacker. And I think you bring up a good point. I think that's kind of like what we are trying to illustrate tonight when talking about Kevin Steele. And I think a lot of people are really hopeful for that. And back with another super chat saying Austin Armstrong will be a great also gel really well with Kevin Steele. And I think you hit on that as well earlier, Clint. We'll take a 205, and then I think we'll say goodnight. But here we go with the 205. Hey, we appreciate you calling in tonight. Good evening. Sunday night. You're on with Kyle Henderson and Clint Lamb. Who are we on the line with, and where are you calling in from?
I'm B. I'm from Birmingham.
All right. What's up, B? Did you say B or D?
D. D is in dog.
All right. D is in dog. What's up, man? How you doing tonight? Give us your take on Kevin Steele.
You guys been talking. You guys been talking a lot about Rolando. Wasn't Kevin Steele there with Rolando, like Rolando freshman year?
He was.
Wasn't he our first decoy under Saban?
Yes, sir, he was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, I was gonna say that I didn't like the hire. It's probably unpopular because I really don't, want to fit the mold. But it seemed like we were getting Auburn's recyclable and Clemson recyclable and Miami recyclable. But I can understand you want to get back to that old Bama defense, 2010, 2011, 2012 type. So it might be a guy to come in, simplify it, dumb it down, make the guys hate them, because when it seems like when they hate you, they play harder for you. So I can understand, if they want to go all back. Just listening to the callers and stuff, they kind of made me think. Because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, God, what are we doing? But I can kind of get on board with now if that's the route we're going to take, because our defense has been very soft. That Tennessee game has made me sick to my stomach. I still get sick thinking about it. But if we can get back to that, I think I'd be happy with it. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I think a lot of Alabama fans don't want to think about that Tennessee game. They can still, they're like, why is Hyatt still catching the football again and again and again? Clint, your take from D from Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the only player I saw play with an edge for the entire year, and he just it was Brian Branch. I thought from start to finish, that was the guy that put forth his best effort. He played physical. He played the way that you want to play the game. And Will Anderson, to me, was still a great player. Like I'm not nearly as down on him as a lot of other people were throughout the year. But Brian Branch, to me, was the perfect representation for what you want. As far as just from an effort standpoint, from playing physical, from understanding his assignment, being able to relay that to others. And the other thing that I'll say about the whole, hating your coach, because I mean, back when I played, and this really translates, and this is not something that everybody that's watching is going to be able to connect with, but this also kind of fits with, pledgeship. The entire point of the brothers who are already initiated and who are a part of the fraternity, the reason that they're such jerks is because the guys who are going through pledgeship together, they grow a bond through their hatred of the brothers, right? The coaching staff, how many times did you get back into the locker room with just your teammates and stuff, and you're complaining about the coaches and how mean they were to you and how they're jerks and they don't understand and all this stuff, and you bond through that and you become closer as a team. That's kind of where a lot of that comes into play. And so I do think that there's a good point there. And with Kevin Steele and Nick Saban kind of running things. And like I said, you've got Austin Armstrong, who brings, some youth and kind of a refreshing mentality or frame of mind. I think it's going to be beneficial for the defense as a whole. I understand why it's not a popular hire, but also it's kind of like the offensive coordinator. I think what happens in these situations is fans are like, hey, it's Alabama. We should be getting whoever we want. Anybody, Glenn Schumann just won back-to-back national championships with Kirby Smart. Doesn't matter. He should want to come to Alabama and play with or coach under Nick Saban. That's not exactly how it works. And a guy like Jeremy Pruitt, it's unfortunate that the timing didn't work out quite like I think Nick Saban wanted it to. But I do think that there's a lot of potential with Kevin Steele, and then we'll see where things are at in a couple of years.
All right, D, get one more punch in before we let you go.
Oh, I'm good. And me, I like the offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
I think what can the guy do when you get him 5 stars and keys to a Ferrari? I'm using Kent logic now. Give me keys to a Ferrari. Let me see how can I really drive.
Mm-hmm.
And once we see that, I don't see no problem with the young guy. He's young, so he ain't got no crazy ideas of how his offense should go. He might make his offense fit the players instead of trying to make his players fit the offense, if that makes any sense.
Love the call,
So
D.
I think
we appreciate it, man. Good points. I like your take on Reese too, man. Call in next time we have our live show, man, and stay blessed in Birmingham.
Quick point, just with Kevin Steele. What do you think everybody's perception was of Will Muschamp when he joined Georgia? He was kind of the established veteran coach who had been a really good defensive coordinator at some places, but he failed pretty miserably at South Carolina, at Florida, kind of the same thing. He was at a premier program. He had all the access to all the talent and stuff like that, and he didn't do great things there either. But his defensive mind and bringing him in to Athens has really helped Kirby Smart. And I think Kevin Steele, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it could be very similar to Will Muschamp heading to Athens.
I like it. And we got a 205 and a 678 in the queue, and I think then we'll wrap it up. So we'll take the 205 right now. Hey, good evening. You're on the line with Clint Lamb and Kyle Henderson, a Bama Insider. Who are we on the line with, and where are you calling in from?
Hey, y'all. This is Peyton from Tuscaloosa. First-time caller. Appreciate y'all taking my call. Wanted to say everybody's already harped on the Kevin Steele bringing back the linebacker edge, so I won't talk about that. I do have a comment and a question though. So on Reeves, I'm really excited. I know you look at what he did, and Notre Dame's leading receiver last year was their tight end. And I think if you look at the NFL, I know it's a different game, but I mean, look at the teams in the Super Bowl. You got Travis Kelce, you got Zach Ertz. The tight end is the way to go in the new football, and I think it's going to be the way that college is going to evolve going forward. Look at Georgia's use of tight ends. So I'm really excited for what he could bring in that regard. But I also wanted to ask, I mean, if you look at Reese's offenses with Notre Dame, statistically, they're not that great. You look at Steele this last year with Miami, they rank like 61st or 64th. I can't remember. But it's not great. Is that a cause for concern for Bama fans, or do you think the stats aren't telling the whole story there?
Hey, Peyton, well, we appreciate you calling in from Tuscaloosa, man. Go ahead, Clint.
No, the stats never tell the whole story. And that's why you really got to take things into context. I don't think Miami's defense, they're still trying to get back. And I do think that Mario Cristobal has them heading in the right direction, mainly because the recruiting's there. And I think that that's where it starts. But Kevin Steele just didn't have enough time there to really get things going, but they did show improvement. I mean, the year before, I think they were in the mid 70s as far as total defense, in the mid 80s as far as scoring defense. And they increased about 20 spots on the scoring defense and 10 spots on the total defense. So that's not substantial, but that's moving in the right direction. One thing about Kevin Steele coming to Alabama for this being his first year, the cupboard's not going to be bare like it was at Miami or like it was, when really at LSU. He stepped into that job, and they took a slight step back from the previous year. They had lost some things following the 2014 season, some key players, which affected things. But, I think that he's in the best position to be successful that he's been in as far as being a defensive coordinator coming to Tuscaloosa, because there's, like I said, it's not going to be a new thing either. Like the relationship's already established with the head coach. You're already familiar with, living in the area, recruiting in the area, doing all those different things. And as far as Reese is concerned, there were a lot of injuries on that, Notre Dame offense. And the tackles were young. By the end of the year, I thought they had gotten a lot better, but early on, you had a lot of breakdowns. And it's kind of like Alabama dealt with in 2021, where it's like, if you're not getting efficient offensive line play and there's too many leaks, you have to take away such a huge portion of probably the playbook that you want to run. And so I think Reese had a little bit of that to deal with. You were replacing a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher in Kyron Williams. You had a new starting quarterback who ended up getting hurt. And then you got to go to the backup who, just to me, no offense to him, but he just wasn't very good. And then you've got, the tight end was phenomenal. And I certainly think that the caller made a great point. I do think that the tight end is very important. And I think that was part of the reason that Nick Saban wanted to hire Tommy Reese, because he's talked about a lot, the mismatch problems that having an effective tight end can do for your offense, as far as defenses having a lot of trouble being able to match both the size and the athleticism of some of these tight ends. Georgia figured out a way to get two of those guys, and that made it all the more difficult, because if you have the one player who can defend the one tight end, that unicorn defensively, it's like, okay, great. Do you have two of them? Because they've got two tight ends that you got to figure out how to cover, and it makes you all the more lethal. And so Alabama will hopefully get to a point where they have at least some kind of element of that in the offense as well.
Peyton, get one more punch in, man, before we let you go.
Yeah, so I know everybody's already talked about can he develop the quarterback. My question is, can Reeves develop our offensive line? I mean, the last 2 years, the recruits we brought in have been kind of lackluster. Certainly the Brockmeyer twins, I mean, one of them's already gone. A little disappointed. How do y'all think he can develop some of the new recruits we've got coming in, like the guy that we flipped from Iowa?
They're going to fit like a glove. I think Eric Wolford and Tommy Reese, the mentality that an offensive line coach, the best thing he understands, the best thing that he can do for his offensive line is establishing the run game and being physical, coming downhill, and then playing off of that to take pressure off of, these guys are 300-pound plus offensive linemen. They're not the most athletic human beings on the planet. So you want to give them every advantage that you possibly can. I feel like Bill O'Brien allowed the play clock to get worked down too far down. I think everybody knows that and can acknowledge that, but that's another advantage for your offensive line that's taken away when you let the play clock get to 2 or 3 seconds. Like the defensive line knows exactly when the ball is going to be snapped. So that's something that, an advantage that's taken away from your offensive line. So just between Eric Wolford and the way that he wants to build the offensive line and what Tommy Rees is going to want to do offensively, I think it's going to fit in together perfectly.
Hey, Peyton, thank you very much for calling in, man. We appreciate your support right here from Tuscaloosa.
Hey, thank y'all real time.
All right. We're going to take our last caller from 678, and we will do that right now. All right. Thanks for calling. You're on the line with Kyle Henderson and Clint Lamb. Who are you on the line with, and where are you calling in from?
This is Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How you doing this evening, Kyle? How you doing this evening, Clint?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I just have to be honest with y'all, and that is I'm underwhelmed as far as the pessimistic part of me would say, as far as both hires, the doggone Hamper hire and the Depend hire. Because one guy I feel is too young for this responsibility. The other one I feel is too old for the responsibility. Then as far as the guest that you had earlier, he was on another show and he stated that as far as Steele has put 9 years in total as far as Alabama and Auburn. And so if he puts another year in, he'll get his retirement as far as putting 10 years in the system. And I would hope that over the years that he has coached, that he's saved enough as far as retirement is concerned. I want to be proven wrong, gentlemen, but on face value, it feels as though on both parts. Reeves is, as far as the gentleman from Notre Dame is only going to be there for a short time. The gentleman, as far as Steele is only going to be there for a short time. So if you're talking about for a short-term fix, it may be okay, but long-term, I want to be proven wrong, gentlemen, but right now on face value, I don't see being proved wrong. Because I was more so, it would be like them going to Ruth Chris, and instead of getting a doggone some filet mignon and blah, 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 and a nice Dom Perignon, they said that, hey, you can have a Coke and a hamburger. And right now, that's what I'm feeling as far as both of the hires right now.
Coke and a hamburger. Clint, what you got? Better than a Coke and a hamburger. But I love Kevin from Dallas. No, but Clint, go ahead.
I mean, I understand why he feels that way. He's saying a lot of things that a big portion of the fan base are feeling as well. So, I mean, to me, Kevin Steele is the type of hire where I think we need to remove the names. And I talked about this before, and understand what is it that Nick Saban's getting in his defensive coordinator? What is he getting in his offensive coordinator? I think there was such a commitment to building the identity of the team around, what it is, and not really, getting guys who fit that, rather than building the mentality of your team around your coordinators, like the opposite way. There's only so many guys that's going to fit what Nick Saban was looking for on defense and what he was looking for on offense and an offensive coordinator hire. I think Tommy Rees has a chance to be around for a while. I really do. Now, granted, I don't think he's going to be a 5 or 6 year guy, but I think, 3-4 years. And honestly, I think that might be all Nick Saban's probably got in him. I mean, I hope that he goes longer. I know fans certainly want him to go longer, but I don't think there's going to be a 1 year deal or a 2 year deal. He's not the sexy, offensive guru, that's going to really make teams, come after him. I mean, Todd Monken, he's done some good things at Georgia, but he's not having people beat down his door to be a head coach. The NFL is trying to recruit him to go be an offensive coordinator, and that might be something that Tommy Rees deals with. But, with Nick Saban nearing the end of retirement, if you're having success as Alabama's offensive coordinator, you probably want to stick around because you might get considered for the job. He'll still be extremely young. I don't know how feasible that'll be, but I think he ends up being around for a while. I think Kevin Steele, unless Alabama and Nick Saban doesn't want him to be around for a while, which probably means they have something better up their sleeve, maybe Jeremy Pruitt in a couple of years, then I don't see him really going anywhere. He's not going to become a head coach, I don't think. What program are you going to leave for where you're going to be the defense coordinator and make a lateral move where it's actually lateral and not a step back? So I think that's going to be more so a lot more on Alabama's side and them not wanting him to stick around than, Kevin still wanting to go elsewhere.
Hey, Kevin, get another question in, man, before we let you go.
Gentlemen, The cupboard is full. The pantry is full. So as far as but all Coach Steele didn't have at Miami, he has his cup runneth over as far as University of Alabama. The same as far as the gentleman from Notre Dame. The cupboard is full, and the cup runneth over again as far as on the offensive side. So, gentlemen, just like in a football game, OC, DC, you all on the clock. The first 4 games, okay. The next 4 games, okay. Then the last 4 games, we should be getting ready for the playoff. Kyle, Clint, thank you all for what you do and continue to do. I will continue listening. I'll continue chiming in when I can get through. And Kyle, I have to poke the bear for a moment. Getting in as far as to your show, Coach Kyle, is like, I'm glad you're not my probation officer, because if you were my probation officer, I could never get out of jail, man, because it's that difficult. That's a good thing.
Yo, man,
and, hey,
look,
everyone loves your content.
No, we really appreciate it. Kevin, email me kyle.henderson@on3.com. Okay. If you guys all want to email me, there's my email, kyle.henderson@on3.com. I'll give you a special code so you can call in kind of the backdoor route. So that's kind of my promo code right now, kyle.henderson@on3.com, if you want to get in a little bit quicker. I appreciate you calling, Kevin. We're going to take one more caller. You have a good night. Stay blessed. Have a fantastic start to your week tomorrow. We'll catch up with you soon, Kevin. All right. This is our last caller. Okay. So you've been patient. You've been on the line for a long time. So we got to get him in. All right. Good evening. You're on the line with Kyle Henderson and Clint Lamb. Thanks for calling in. Who are you on the line with and where are you calling in from?
Hey, this is Derek from Tuscaloosa.
All right, man. Go ahead. We appreciate your support from Tuscaloosa. Go ahead. Kevin Steele hired as a DC. Take it away.
Well, I'm just going to give him the opportunity to prove his worth and such. I'm going to go on a little tangent if you don't mind. We have a new OC, a new DC. But what about our strength coaches, man? I mean, we're getting drug up and down the field. We're not getting yards after catches. We're not as strong as we used to be. Those bench press videos we used to put out there routinely, the squats, deadlifts. What happened to that? I mean, I think that's another part of this that we're not even touching on right now.
Clint, what do you think?
Talked about this a little bit the other night. I think it's been the goal of the program. Like what Nick Saban was sort of envisioning was not an offense that was built as much on power. It was built more on finesse. So like your strength and conditioning program is going to reflect that. Now I think they're wanting to get back to more of a powered base, offensive style and defensively, kind of the same thing. And so I think that the strength and conditioning program is once again going to reflect that. Like, I don't think they're going to put as much of an emphasis on getting, their 360, 370 pound offensive lineman that they just recruited down to, 315, 320, 310, something like that. I think it's more of a, hey, we get you down to 330, 335. That's a good weight, fighting weight for what we're looking for. And I think that you're going to see them be able to start to bully people a little bit more. I wouldn't put this on the strength and conditioning coach, though, at all. I think it's been a lot more of a product of what Alabama's been trying to build their roster into, or where they thought they wanted it to go. And now they're starting to realize, okay, and I think we all thought this isn't like a problem that Alabama had in particular. Everybody thought that the game was heading more towards finesse. And everybody told Georgia, you're not going to win this way. You can't win with elite defense anymore. You can't win with running the football. You got to have a quarterback that throws it 47 times a game for 5,000 yards and all this stuff. And they've proven us wrong. Back-to-back national championships. They've gone the exact opposite than a lot of other. Now, granted, they don't have an archaic offense. It's nothing like that, but they live in a lot more of the old school mentality, and it's still effective in today's college football. So I think that you're going to see Alabama start to reflect that a little bit more, and the strength and conditioning program as a whole, I think, is going to follow suit.
All right, Colin, do you have anything else to add to the show before we let you go?
I don't, but thank you. You have a great program, a great product. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for taking my call. You have a wonderful evening. I hope you have great things to come in 2023.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's the vibe right there, Clint.
We got the best callers.
Yeah, no doubt. No, we really appreciate all you guys. Like I said, if you guys didn't get in, you guys can call again next time. We have a call-in show right here. Clint, you do fantastic work. I always say that. Love having you on. Jimmy Stein joined us earlier to bat leadoff. He's Clint Lamb. I'm Kyle Henderson, both a Bama Insider. You can go to Bama Insider right now and read up more on Kevin Steele. You can read on Tommy Rees. You can join the message board and interact with thousands of fans from all over the globe that love the Alabama Crimson Tide just as much as you do. So you can get your recruiting coverage. You can get your team coverage. Just go to BamaInsider.com. Hit the thumbs up on this video and become a subscriber of our YouTube channel. It really helps our message go out so you're notified every single time we drop a video right here on Bama Insider. Have a beautiful week. Be productive. Be good people. Be positive. That's the vibe. And we'll catch you next time right here on BamaInsider.com.